Yo. Um, Normally, uh, StreamYard is ahead. You know how there's a delay with YouTube, and so normally StreamYard is ahead only by a few seconds, of YouTube. But on this occasion, it seems like YouTube is actually ahead of StreamYard. Um, but anyway, good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Um, I thought it'd been a little while since I've done a stream, so better kind of show myself. Um, been a little bit occupied, I suppose. Trivial sort of stuff, but yeah, maybe it's I suppose nice to share outside of the sphere, sort of worldly things. It might seem a bit boring and mundane, but like we do have lives outside of being in spaces like this. So I figured I'd just share some stuff that's been happening my end. Also helps me to sort of keep track, I suppose, or helps the memory, because otherwise I'll just totally forget and be like, oh yeah. So I can't really remember where we were last time, and I suppose in a way this stream is a little bit flying off the cuff, so it's not going to be very well structured. So you could probably expect it to be a bit of bumbling around and just nattering. But so let me think. Let me take it from the end of January, because that was my tax year when it needs to be submitted. And although it was submitted, I got freaked out because I got a letter in the post, and it said, like, we're writing to let you know that your last self-assessment tax return you'll need to complete is for the year ending in the fifth, like the one I sent off. So, like, you need to complete it. So it made me like shatter brick kind of thing. I was thinking, I'm sure I submitted it. So I guess their system hasn't quite updated yet, and this is a false alarm. But got get the heart flowing, palpitations. So having double checked, definitely I have submitted it, so I should not be in trouble, because there are severe penalties if you don't submit your return online on time. So some more people have come in. So Shadrach, you have been promoted to a moderator, by the way. D-Man's here. Thank you, D-Man. Angler's here. Thank you, Angler. Thank you, Shadrach, as well. GM's here. Thank you, GM, for coming. And Douglas Edwards. How you doing, Douglas? I hope things are well. Last I heard from your end, you had an exam, and you were kind of praying, like, fingers crossed, and all the best for you. And I hope stuff happens. And the whole philosophy behind failure is kind of like embrace the idea of messing up and making mistakes, because that way, you learn far more value and through experience. And Iridium McCush is here. Good evening, sir. And JR's here. Good evening. Yeah. StreamYard is actually behind on YouTube. So Kush, JR. Oh no! Oh, now you're appearing on my StreamYard. So I'm gonna have to kind of keep an eye more on the YouTube chat, so I can check, keep up to date with either what you're saying or who's popping in or whatnot. So yeah, tax return, that's out the way. Usually the start of the year is when I get most of my headaches. So once we get past kind of like April, I'm like, yeah, the rest of the year I can just basically relax, because I don't have my so in January I've also got the TV, the dreaded TV license. So I was like, all right, fine, my kid watches TV, and I try to watch a bit of TV, so fine, we'll pay that. So we've got some bills, we've got tax returns, then I've got my car insurance. And also I keep this is a sign, this is a good sign, because when I went through my traumatic breakup, that was in January. So it's kind of like an anniversary. Um, and being busy or occupied, and as the years are going by, I totally forgot about it. I was just like, oh yeah, it's now like 4 years or something like that, since that all went topsy-turvy. So a good sign. In February, the day before Vampire Day, aka Valentine's Day, is another anniversary, is when my dad passed away. And that was like 21, 22 years ago now. And that's another sort of anniversary that kind of slips my mind. So this period of time of the year is a sort of significant, if I really wanted to allocate value to it, which is a bit pointless now. It doesn't really hold its significance to me anymore. I didn't have the best of relationships with my dad, and it was a long time ago. And my mentality has changed greatly since those days, those years. It's a mixture back, basically. There are good and bad stuff. Not as perhaps traumatic as some people have gone through, but still. My father was an elderly man, for example. Maybe I should do a separate stream discussing a bit of my family structure. So welcome, Tim. Welcome, Red Pill in the Wind. Anyone else popped in? So as obviously, so we're now, but even though it's recent, it's already behind me, come and gone. I didn't even flatter an eyelash. So coming up now is my car's MOT, and on the whole, like always always give an allowance for something that might need repairing. It's kind of funny. I've got a seized brake caliper. Right, this might get a bit technical and boring for some people, like mechanical, like cars, but I've got a seized up brake caliper, and it's been like that since the day I had the car, basically. However, it still passes the brake check. It still holds the vehicle, so it gets a tick, it gets a pass. But technically, I've only got 3 brakes on the 4 wheels. Yeah. So and the one that's seized up is in the rear, so it's your hand. It's one of my handbrake brakes. So when I put if I'm on a hill and I'm parking with the handbrake, only one brake is actually holding that car from rolling down the hill. It must be a good, the good and the bad, eh? So, and I keep thinking, maybe I should just change it for the sake of changing it. But alas, other things this year have cropped up. The electric, I had a warning on the dash, check your system, steering malfunction kind of thing. And I was just like, meh. See, I'm not used. See, these modern cars, and this is like a 2007, but to me that's modern. It's far more electrical than my previous car, which is a 95. Much more mechanical. One fast Dak is here. He's gonna throttle me. Dak, check out the picture in my community post and you'll be like, oh my god, how is he still alive? I like to live on the edge. Integrate danger into your life. But yeah, so I actually have a level 1 mechanics qualification. Like my sensei said to me that I could pretty much do my own MOTs if I bothered to take it further. If I wanted a career in a garage, there would be no problem. But when I did my studies, I was doing it because at the time I was a new driver, and I see when you're responsible for a vehicle, then part of that responsibility is knowing what the hell you're like what's in your possession. You know, like you're driving around a ton of metal. You should know how this works. So I did it really for my own self knowledge rather than as a career path. And I think over time, especially with psychology and philosophy, it kind of indicates, or it's indicative. Is that the right word? Of my how I look at things. I look at things mechanically, and how does it work? How does it fit together? Um, so I've got a kind of like an engineering style of processing that goes on. So the car comes up with a check your system warning, and it locked up the steering wheel. And at the time, I'm swearing. I'm like, what the hell's all this about? But I discovered that if I pressed on the brake, the light would go out and I would get my steering back. So I was like, okay, this ain't no biggie. Maybe it's a safety protocol to make sure your brakes are working. So I was ignoring this check your steering light for ages, just thinking, this is just. I mean, it is a safety protocol, but I was looking for the wrong reasons. I was thinking it's to make sure you check your brakes, kind of thing. But no, lo and behold, the EPS was going kaputs on me. And I started noticing this sort of warning light more and more. Now this time of year, the MOT comes up. I book the car into the garage and I bring this up as a point of notice to them. I say, is this would this fail the MOT? And I told them about, like, it'll disappear if you press the brake pedal, and they were a bit perplexed by that. And they were like, yeah, this ain't really looking very good. I mean, you kind of need your steering wheel when you're driving. I'm like, yeah, I thought so. I mean, all this time I was just like shifting my body weight to turn corners, get the car up on two wheels sort of thing. And the thing was, like, I also had a turn signal bulb blow. And unlike my old car, which would be simple, pop open the bonnet or the hood, just, change a bulb, easy peasy. In these modern cars, it's so compact in the engine bay that you can't actually access the bulb. And I was like considering taking don't tell me I have to take the front bumper off or pull out the entire headlight just to get to that turn signal. So I had to quickly look up like the wonders of the internet. It seemed like the more feasible way, the less ludicrous way, is to go through the wheel arch. I'm like, oh man, so you have to go through the wheel arch to get access to this bulb. And half the clips holding it's all these cars are all plastic now as well. That's another thing. Oh, this is turning into a grumble. But the previous owner of the vehicle that had it before me had taken the body kit. It's not really a body kit, like a sports body kit, but like a OEM stock standard. Take off the wheel arch trim, they took off the bumper at some point, and they didn't put it back properly. Like, I discovered many of the clips holding these plastic parts on were broken, and many of the like the button style clips were missing. In some ways, that actually made it easier because there's less for me to take off. So I managed to get the access to the bulb, changed that over, and then I ripped out the lower dash and found where this elusive EPS module thing is. And so for the last couple of weeks, I've been updating my car knowledge, and that's been quite therapeutic. So I'm going to try and tie this in with a bit more of the psychology sort of. So it's I feel like I've been doing some meditation whilst and getting to see. I was very familiar with my old car. I knew it. I had it for 17 years. I knew it inside out. And I had looked up how to pull-out pieces before, so I was very familiar with that vehicle. But this vehicle, I mean, it's like a Pandora's box. So when the call for the need presents itself, I'm sure I've worded that kind of wrong, but you know what I mean. Like when a need becomes essential, then you're going to pull your finger out and find, you're going to get to hopefully you do, and get to the bottom of it and work out what the hell's going on and how to go about doing it. And just like a Pandora's box, there I am looking up the EPS, and at the same time I'm like, oh, I could fix the air conditioning while I'm at it, and then I'm like, yeah, the screen wash reservoir seems to be a bit of a low pressure. Maybe I can do a little jobby on that one too. So I have now already kind of, like, as we're hitting the springtime now, temperatures beginning to get warmer. I'm looking forward to the summer. I really hated this one. I've never normally hated winter, but this winter for some reason was the one I went by. It was the worst one. Not because it was particularly bad, but it was my attitude towards it. I just not in the mood for winter. Like, fucking yeah, and that made it all that much more torturous. But I'm relieved it's now beginning to pass, and I'm looking forward to the summer. And I think what I might, I've got all these different little jobbies. I think I might do the car up a little bit over that time. And so not only has it been therapeutic, but intimacy. This is like, don't want to get too kind of what's the mechanical version of bestiality? Like my car is my wife kind of thing, but it's like that. And it's kind of funny because when I was in the relationship with the old car, the car of 17 years, the ex-partner would get jealous and envious and be like, you love that car more than me. And I'm like, damn right I do. This car has never broken down on me. It's the most reliable thing, relationship, entity, or whatever I've ever had. I could trust my car. And having a car is very important to me. It symbolizes freedom and independence. It was at that cusp of exiting teenage years and entering early adult years. So it has the first car, it has sentimental value, big time. Many good memories, road trips, experiences, and although it had lots of things that need to be changed or whatever, it was very rewarding. It's weird. It's weird, like you would pump up the tires or put gas in it, and it would just it would drive better. It's almost like, thank you, daddy. It's like, yes, darling. Yeah, I'll make sure I look after you. I'll probably prioritize you more than other things and sod it to everything else. But anyway, that car is in car heaven now. So this car, this troublemaker, I think it's going to be one of them kind of, I don't hate, it's going to be like what is it, like teething problems or something. It's like, you rascal, you're giving me an you're burning out the EPS. All right, fine. So it's these tragedies have brought us closer together. And also I realized that my spine, like arching your back upside down underneath the dashboard, and you're like, oh, my back, and with a frozen shoulder, you're trying to oh, my left arm. From the outside world, all you see is a pair of legs sticking out, and you could just hear groaning going on. But eureka! Discover the EPS. Now, the mystery. Why is it, if you look at that picture on my community tab, why is it I have not actually bolted the thing in? Because getting access to the bolts is the next challenge. The wiring loom is zero slack. It's tight. It was a job just to unplug it. So to get access to the bolts, and I think there's a third bolt right at the top, out of sight. So I can't even get my hand up there to feel around if there is a bolt or a pin. But maybe I might get my kid to do it. She's got small hands. Yeah. And so I wasn't too sure. It's like, is it really the EPS? You know, this is where you do the problem solving. Like, could it be something else going on? So I started feeling around. Is there an issue of moisture? Maybe water has gotten into the cabin and fried the circuitry. Managed to unplug it, inspect the plug, see if there's any signs of corrosion. And then you go off in bizarre little tangents like, would resetting the entire ECU be beneficial? So biting the bullet anyway, I kind of looked up on eBay a used module. No idea how many miles are on it. It just says it's working. That's all the information I have. And literally today, I decided, right, I'm going to unplug it and just see if this module actually works. So that's why I didn't go, even though I still need to unbolt the original and, you know, all this. I didn't want to bolt in the donor to find out that the donor was no good. So I figured, well, I might as well plug it in loose and just see if that warning light disappears. And lo and behold, eureka, like, it's gone. So that was already a victory. And then I thought, right, that was a pain in the ass. I'm just going to zip tie this thing, and that'll do. And the thing is, because my MOT is now expired, technically, and until I get my car down to the garage to be sent off for the MOT, the thing is they are fully booked until March. So I'm now in limbo. The MOT is expired. I can't take it down to the garage because they don't have any free slots until March. I'm basically, my vehicle is now stuck in the driveway. So from trying to rush it all, I now have plenty of time to mess around with bolting it in and probably doing some of the other jobs. Maybe have a look at the air filter, maybe pull out the MAF sensor, and maybe straighten out some of the bodywork a little bit. Oh, and I also got yellowing headlights that need polishing, buffing and polishing, and, you know, scrubby. It's like a car, you know, so many things wrong with it. So many things missing as well, but yeah, it's fun. It's a project, you know. Just like a woman. No, I'm only joking. You know, she's not perfect. In terms of comparisons, you know, from the old car to the new one, at first I was very resentful. You know, always used to be like, never get electric windows, because if the car should flip upside down and fall into a ditch, you might be trapped in there because the electrics have gone kaputs. But now I'm like, hey, this is fancy. Instead of having a 3-door car, I've now got a 5-door car, and I'm like, hey, I've got doors in the back. You know, I can open the windows from back from. Well, you guys, you know, to me this is like novelty. To me, I'm like, wow, this is magic. No wonder people believe in superstition and spirituality, because this electricity, this circuitry, is kind of like, you know, it has a sensor and it knows when people are sitting down, when they know when the seat belt has gone in. Who hasn't buckled their seatbelt? You know, I don't even need to ask them. I could just look at my car's computer and it'll tell me, like, belts are clipped. Back in the past, I would have been like, this is baloney. This is just more stuff that's going to break and malfunction. And this is, I think, a phenomena that conspiracy type minded people experience, because when it's something they don't quite understand, oh, it must be the elites trying to do one on us. They're trying to, and it's just like, no, you just simply just don't understand, and it's okay. It's not surprising. You're not going to understand everything. Like, I'm not an electrician. My understanding of electrical components is much better now than it was in the past when I was doing that mechanics course. So I have a better understanding, but like, and I do. I'm not afraid to sort of mess around with wiring. Fun times, but you can see that when you're not used to something, it can seem ominous, and if you're not careful, you could be quick to condemn it and be like, no, this is bad. Like this debate about AI, for example, or the algorithm. Oh, this is evil stuff. We should abolish it and all this. It's actually, whoa. It does have benefits, and some of the things we enjoy and maybe take for granted, you might not even realize that there is programming back behind the scenes kind of thing. The problem isn't so much the AI or the algorithm, it's the responsibility in implementing it or using it, or basically people abusing it. So it's kind of like when people say, oh, mobile phones, evil, get rid of your mobile phones. Oh, my life is so much better now. I'm free of the shackles of the mobile phone. It's like, the mobile phone wasn't the problem. You were the problem. You were irresponsible with the mobile phone. And so now that you can't be responsible with it and you discarded it, now you're trying to be virtue signaling and say, oh, how enlightened I am. I don't have a smartphone and all this. And you likely be say, oh, it's tracking me, it's following me and all this sort of stuff. It's like, look, you could be tracked and followed without your phone. It's not that hard. Especially when you're daydreaming, just wandering around in the street. Many people just, stalkers, they follow people home. So it's not, if someone, like, let's play the game of conspiracy. If someone were to like be targeting you, I mean, paranoia is fun little fact information. Those who have the paranoia kind of mind is associated with a narcissistic trait, because of you believe you're so important that you must be followed, and they must be monitoring you, and they must be tracking you and watching and hiding around the corner. So this is your self-importance shooting through the roof, when really no one gives a monkeys. It's just your wild imagination. You probably would love it if someone were really targeting you. And this is not to say it doesn't actually happen. I mean, obviously it does, but the way people latch on and it becomes trendy is what I'm trying to sort of indicate. So the problem with AI, automation, even robotics, I'm not saying that these concerns aren't founded, or they haven't got good reason, or they're not legitimate or something like that. I just get a bit people get a bit carried away with some of these ideas, and it becomes hysterical. Tie that in with how society is going, where uncertainty is becoming more commonplace. Then this imaginative, magical, emotional, fearful way of thinking, you can see how it kind of complements it in a bad way. These ideas of like, oh, we're going to have Terminators on the streets, and they're going to put us in incubators, and it's like, whoa, steady. And even if I'm totally wrong, and yeah, they are actually going to be doing that, and it all became true, it's like, yeah, so what? I mean, not to sound dismissive, but I mean, okay, like, don't forget to enjoy life. This is now sort of verging on this idea of like, no, but I must have control. My sense of security demands it. I need to be ahead of the curve. I must know what they're planning so that it somehow makes me feel like I can outsmart them. And it's like, look, if they really wanted you dead, or they really wanted you to do all these heinous things to you, I mean, there's not really much stopping them, is there? They could just bundle you into the back of the van, forge your documents, you disappear, you no longer exist, and then they can torture you to their heart's content if they really wanted to. I'm sure they could, you know. But anyway, so the car is going to be sitting on the driveway. I'm going to be busy with that. And the kiddo is on half term. We're already halfway through it, and it's been a nightmare. She's so intense now. I'm chalking it up to like it's her age range. There's a lot of stimuli, and her character and personality is wanting to assert itself more. So she's becoming a bit of a handful. But as a result, I've been having some interesting philosophical talks with her, trying to help her understand some of these behaviors, because with her autism, she doesn't seem to have the awareness of why it is she is so intense, why it is she's got a one-track mind. And so when things happen randomly, or change of plan, unexpected change of plan, this could be like a triggering event that causes her to have a meltdown. And I didn't realize it until I was actually talking on the subject, but it made me understand why it is she gets upset with computer games or electronic devices. And I'm theorizing it's because she has this expectation, this assumption that when she plays like a computer game, like when she plays a level, she assumes that she's going to succeed, level complete, and that the next level is going to be more or less the same. She's not really factoring in that the levels get harder, the bosses get more difficult. So it's kind of like the early levels, the early bosses, is a bit of instant gratification, and then there's this entitlement that the next proceeding is going to be just the same, and she's going to get that kind of success dopamine hit. But it turns out, no, you're gonna get well, like, to her it'd be like a punishment, I suppose. But you can see how her expectations, her assumptions were denied, and she has the difficulty in adapting. So this is where that's like it's a one-track mind. There is no other track in her perception. So trying to shift her onto another course of action and be like, no, look, you failed. The level is getting difficult. You need to now learn to adapt and develop. This just does not compute. It's like, but I lost against the boss, and this is unfair. She can't even get past that sort of injury to be able to think, oh, you mean I'm not going to be able to just easy peasy cakewalk it? I have to actually think. I have to like theorize and contemplate or strategize some other kind of way around. So I think that was a good talk I was having with her, and I'm going to develop that idea further, I think, because it crops up in numerous ways and in different scenarios. Like I used to say to her early on, look, you win some, you lose some. You can have good losers and you can have bad winners. Much better to lose. sort of, well, not much better, but you know, there is a benefit to losing, and she's got this idea of being a captain as well, or a leader, because another sort of life lesson I try and teach her is like, look, logic and emotions can look identical, and it can be very confusing to know when you're having these thoughts or when people say things, is this coming from a place of logic or is it coming from a place of emotion? So I use the analogy of a captain on a ship, and one is no better than the other. Like if you had logic as a captain, yes, your ship goes on course and it does well, but this logical captain gets very tired very quickly. It uses a lot of energy and brain power. The logic captain has to have a break, and so this is where an emotional captain can take over, and they work together. The emotional captain has much more endurance in a way. So in terms of working hours between the two of them, the emotional captain will actually be in the captain's seat far longer than the logical captain. But as a result of an emotional captain, the ship isn't necessarily going to be on course and doing the things that it should be doing. It's going to be an emotional ship. But you can't eject the emotional captain and be like, you're doing a crap job, because you can't. The logical captain has a shorter endurance or stamina, and you need this cooperation going on. What was I talking about there? Kind of lost my train of thought. So those are two kind of early lessons I was trying to teach her. Like, you got your logic, you got your emotions, and you win some and you lose some. Oh, because she wants to be a captain. And I said, look, you're not going to be a good captain until you know the plight, or whatever, what the subordinates go through. The captain, well, I suppose you could have a captain. You could have management, you know, who has no experience of what the shop floor is like, but there's that disconnect. So a much better captain is someone who's actually been through the lower levels, let's say, and knows what it's like to slug it out with the rest of the crew. As in, basically, the captain knows what it means to lose. So if you want to be a good captain, you better do a lot of losing and have a lot of failures, so that you understand the sort of principles and deal with them. Otherwise, you're going to be a very entitled captain, expecting everything to go your way without any problems or hitch or hiccup or something. And that's not, in my opinion or in my estimation, not a very effective or adaptable kind of captain. This is a captain with fingers crossed and hope for the best and have a meltdown because reality comes biting them in the butt or whatever. So what this tells me basically is that simply saying this to her isn't really enough. It needs to be integrated. It needs to be like penetrated into the mind. It needs to be applied, and she needs to connect those dots and realize it for herself. Anyway, I've been a bit neglectful in the chat because I've just been rambling on. We were going to actually discuss a little topic, just in case I had nothing to fill the void with. Let me just quickly think. Do I have any other? Let me quickly have a bit of coffee as well. We had a school trip before the holiday. We went to the river, and it destroyed my legs. What do you call it? What do you call that part of the body that's behind the knee? You know, you got your armpit. What do you call that? Like your knee pit? You know, like the backside of the knee. They I don't know, they were stretched out or something, like they were excruciating. I think it's a sign I don't do enough walking. And also, like, the kids were making me. They treated me. They treated me like a wardrobe. I was carrying like about 4 coats as well as my. Cause it's like, everyone's like power walking, and I'm wearing my winter's jacket, and the kids are wearing it. And they're taking their coats off. I'm carrying their coats. I'm carrying bags. I'm just like walking along. But yeah, we went to the river for some environmental save the planet kind of workshop. And I learned something kind of interesting, which goes against the sort of narrative. So long ago, man, it's only like 200 years ago, there weren't really any sewer systems. So sewage, as in like poop, would be dumped onto the beach. The beach was the toilet, and it would be very smelly, And the only kind of creatures that were living on the beach at that time were these types of little worms. I've forgotten what they're called. But now you go there today, you still find these worms. These worms thrive in pollution. But you find a whole bunch of other creatures that only survive in non-polluted water. So we're finding all these little bugs underneath the rocks, and we're like using little fishing nets, and we're like, "Ooh, look what I found! I found a shell, and these are like Asian shells, and it's all this sort of stuff." So the question came up to ask the children, like, "So is this clean water? Is this polluted water, or is this non-polluted, relatively clean water?" And the answer comes back as clean, fresh water. You got what are called freshwater shrimps, and they only appear because the water is considered like fresh water. So that was a bit of a like, I thought we were dying in pollution here. Okay. Well, yeah, that was an exhausting trip, fun, educational, whatever. That finished off the school first half of the term, and then we had the holiday. That's about it, really, in terms of like updating you guys on what's been happening around here. I mean, yeah, I've been a bit behind with. I keep promising like I'm writing, and I am. But I don't know, like when I look at half a page, I don't think, yeah, that's enough. I can do a topic on that. I mean, maybe I could. It might be like a 15-minute video. But and maybe that's that would suffice. But I don't know, something. The I don't feel enough aspect is like, no, you need to write more. You need to make this like 4 pages long, and it needs to be enough for like a 2-hour stream. It's like, yeah, I'm my own captor or something like that. So let's move on to a topic then, shall we? Let's talk about the wall, because I had this sort of epiphany. Like, some of you sometimes might see that kind of, I've got a 3D printed thumbnail, the wall defeats them all. And I was looking at that and I'm thinking, is this true? Is that like, no, wait, hold on. I know, be like, yeah. Like, when we think of the wall, the way we talk about it, right? Now I'm going to actually start paying attention to what's being said here, because we're on topic. Right. And I kind of want some of your feedback or whatever. So when we talk about the wall, we sort of associate this with like accountability, right? Here comes life, here comes reality. It's time to pay your dues, time for a bit of a shock. And as such, like, it's undefeated, it's unavoidable, it's omnipresent, and all and that sort of stuff, right? And I was wondering, so where did this wall come from? You might think like, who made this wall? And so maybe some people might have said something like, well, men make the wall. But it got me kind of pondering. Now, there's going to be an element of, like, we talk about narcissism a lot on this channel. There's going to be I have found a link with narcissism and this wall, and it got me playing with the idea. So I suspect, like, reality has walls. It has boundaries. Like, normal people, people who are, like, they've got life skills, they've got experience, they've matured, they've aged, etc. Like, you will bump into the reality wall from time to time, but it doesn't seem to have a devastating effect on, say, people like you and I. We kind of brush up against the wall and be like, oh yeah, there's a boundary there, we can't cross it. It's like, okay, I'm being kept in check. And maybe sometimes you might be like, okay, this is going to be a challenge I will overcome. And we might even indeed overcome. But when we talk about the wall in terms of, especially like with women, this wall is undefeatable. You cannot overcome. So why is there such a difference here? Is it the same wall we're talking about? Because for them, not just women, like for say like the more left-leaning side, this is a big problem. Like, when reality kind of puts you in check, this is crisis. But when reality puts, say, you and I in check, we're just like reminded, it's like, no, you have limitations and you cannot exceed them, or at least not yet. There are things you need to overcome before before thou shalt not pass, before you're allowed to pass, kind of thing. So this is where I'm going with it. I'm like, how is it for some people? So the wall isn't necessarily undefeatable, because for you and I, we can overcome it given enough time, experience, education, level, self-awareness or whatever. It's only undefeatable for the cuckoo in the brain. Maybe I'm being a bit rude there, but like the touch in the head type people. And so it kind of comes more into it's not really a physical barrier, it's more of a psychological barrier that comes along. And then I don't know why I didn't really think of this before, long ago. I mean, so when we now look into the world of narcissism, it's a self-defense mechanism. It's there to push away the harshness of reality, to defend the fragile ego from the truth and from reality. So this psychological wall that is so devastating to them, to the narcissist, is a manifestation of their own creation. Men didn't make this wall. Reality didn't make this wall. This is a wall that was made by the narcissist to protect them from reality. And because they're inside this bubble, this fantasy bubble, it's almost like the mystic fogs obscures their vision. While all is well, they can forget about reality. The wall is taking care of it. They don't even have to really acknowledge there is a wall, because in the narcissistic mind, their bubble is the world, and as such, there is no real perimeter. So while everything in this fantasy is going tickety-boo, the narcissist is completely unaware of the wall, doesn't think there is one, even though they're the ones who built the wall to protect them. It's like, once it's a kind of like now that's been taken care of, like out of sight, out of mind. And so when this fantasy plays out over the years, the fog starts to dissipate. Then remnants of a wall can start to be seen. It starts to become visible. They start to As the narcissist tries to expand and stretch out in its environment, it does start coming up against the wall. And in the beginning, it might be like a gentle reminder indicator. It's like, hello, I'm here, I am, to remind you there's a reality outside. And the mere fact of spotting a few of these bricks terrifies them, because it's like, what do you mean I thought this was eradicated. I thought there was no reality. I thought the fantasy was all there is. If there is a wall, and this wall is something I've built to protect me from reality, and I can now see it. So there's another reason, like the denial of the wall. If I can now see this wall, I don't even need to see reality to know it exists. I know it exists because there's a wall in place. So they start to see the wall, and it starts to whisper to them. It's like, I was put here by you, and I am something of your creation, reminding you that there is indeed a reality that exists that you're trying to escape from, and you better sort yourself out, because this is going to become a problem. So for the narcissist, the number one probably tactic is like denial. There is no wall. There is no external reality. I am the world, or whatever. And from that starts to become more the frantic search of supply to bolster up this fantasy. So they try to create more fog, this mystic fog, this magical LSD trip, to take their mind and their eyes away from the wall. And this now becomes a battle between this wall versus the propping up of the fantasy. If they can manage to prop up the fantasy, they can keep the wall at bay. But this is one of the challenges. So, and this is why when you and I bump into the wall, we're not terrified and like shock horror, like, oh my God, it's like, oh, oops, okay, all right, there's a wall there, get on with it. But for the narcissist, this is it's almost like a spiked wall. This is a wall of mortification. This is death looming over them. So there is a terrifying aspect of encountering, of this realization that, holy crap, there is a wall there. And I suppose another coping mechanism would be to sort of say, okay, fine, hands up, there is a wall, but men made it, or society is oppressing me, So as we're discussing here, lo and behold, this is a creation. They've done it to themselves, is what I'm trying to say. They are at the mercy of their own creation. They are victims by their own hands. This isn't the wall of normal societal reality boundaries. This is a different kind of wall that is closing in on them. And then if I make a sort of analogy like a sinking sand, it's almost like they're in sinking sand at this point, and they're in the center. So everything is kind of, how do you describe that? Like funneling down in towards the center where they are, and it kind of pulls this wall in even faster, until in the end they can reach out to the left and right and touch both sides of this. This wall has become a suffocating environment, and it blocks out the sun, it blocks out the sky. It's like a column at this point. And at which point, this is when it all comes crashing down, and into the sandpit they go, sort of thing, into oblivion. And then a little add-on to this is, where there is no wall, for some, if there is no wall, let's say, then there's probably a cliff, so the lemmings off a cliff kind of sort of analogy. Both result in their demise, is where I'm going with that. So either the wall's going to close in on them and consume them. They are consumed by their own defense system. The one thing that was supposed to protect them ends up destroying, because as it implodes, it crushes down on this fantasy, and the fantasy, as much fuel as they're trying to pump into it to make it sustainable, it's just smoke and mirrors. That's why I was kind of like saying it's a bit like fog, this mystic fog. It's an illusion. It's a fragile bubble, and it can't stand the rigors of a wall of the circular wall closing in on them. So I thought that was I'm not sure. What do you guys think? I mean, so I think what I'm trying to get at as well is like there seems to be more of a intriguing kind of aspect with this wall. I think we kind of say it in a bit in too easy of a passing. Just the wall defeats them all. She's hit her 30s, no eggs. It's like, there's more to it, and it's fun because when you unpack it further, it's like you're up shit's creek and it's all your own. I mean, I'm being a bit mean, it's like the sadism coming out in me, but it's like, come on, it's your own. You know what I'm saying? Like it's you did it to yourselves, and as much as you want to try and blame everyone and deny everything, you're just making it worse. And we aren't responsible in any shape, way, or form. And maybe like we need to sort of count our lucky stars. That when reality hits us, when we bump into reality's wall, it's not trying to destroy us or do anything. It's just, oi, like sort of fix yourself up there a bit or whatever. Check yourself. Now, I spoke about that off the top of my head. I did actually start writing it out, so I'll quickly it's only half a paragraph. So I'll just, this might sound a bit muttering. I'm kind of like reading to myself but aloud. So these are my notes anyway. Let's see if I covered everything. Right, the wall. So it's not really a creation of reality. Reality has walls. Normal people bump up against it, but it's not really a problem for them. And sometimes they'll overcome such challenges. The wall, as we talk about it, is a creation of the narcissist. It is their own doing. The wall is something the narcissist puts up to keep reality at bay. To them, there is no wall. Where they live within this fantasy is the world, and it's got no boundaries. It's limitless. They do not want to be contained because this is like oppression. It works up until a point. Then the fantasy dissipates. When it does, the wall starts to be visible. They start to notice, but deny its existence. As the fantasy continues to falter, the wall becomes more ominous. It stretches far and wide. Countermeasures need to be deployed. Simply denying it won't keep it at bay anymore. Nothing stops the wall. As the fantasy contracts, the wall is brought nearer and nearer. And that's, I think, a pertinent point to make, because as the fantasy contracts, this is the supply no longer being adequate enough to sustain the fantasy. So it shrinks. The world of the narcissist shrinks down. They burn bridges with people. They have run-ins with the law. They make a mess of their life. They make bad decisions. So their power and influence, they start being exposed. They start making blunders, and other narcissists are stealing the limelight or stealing supply. People go their own way, go no contact. How do they get their how do they get their fix from their victims if the victims are gone? So that the narcissistic world contracts, it shrinks down before the mortification. So the wall, as such, the wall is brought nearer and nearer. So the narcissistic bubble becomes tighter and suffocating, and they try to escape. Breaking the wall or trying to get past it isn't a solution. Right, here's a point I missed out to say. So trying to this is damned if you do, damned if you don't, because now they are trapped within the walls they created, and they want to escape this suffocating environment. But where would this escape take them? It would land them now on the other side of the wall. But what is that? That is reality. So if they escape this prison they've created, they've landed themselves in reality. Um, Equally as bad, harsher place. I'm not sure which one they would prefer, but they're between a rock and a hard place. So yeah, an important point to make. So they want to break free, they want to escape, but breaking the wall down, like if you want to have fun, offer them a sledgehammer and go, here you go, break down the walls of your prison, and see where that gets you. You know, they'll probably be like, oh goody, freedom. They'll jump at the chance, but then they'll be like, uh-oh, now I'm on the outside. Now I got fear of life or whatever. So yeah, it places them. So where there is no wall, there is a cliff. And maybe that's what's on the other side of the. Should they break through the wall, maybe that's what they'll end up doing is falling. They realize that it's right next to a cliff. And that's my little segment, my little spiel on the wall. What do you think? Was that fun? And then we could take this sort of observation, and we can look into our crystal ball at how the rest of the year is going to potentially turn out. And the prognosis, I suppose, if you wanted to be short about it, is that it's not looking good. Those who don't have the stability or the fortitude or the resilience, and these words have nuances, by the way. This is going to be something. Oh, this is something I'm going to be working on in the coming weeks. Is so my kids' school is trying to put a focus on mental health, and they're basically virtue signaling. They're using buzzwords. Oh, we've got to teach the kids empathy. Oh, we've got to teach the kids confidence. Oh, we've got to teach the kids resilience. And I'm like, whoa. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to make things worse. It's all well and good to say these words, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. They come with responsibility, consequences, ramifications. There are cons as well as pros. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be taking these kids down a dark, dark path. So the nuances of words like resilience, but going back to this prognosis of the rest of this year, we're now in February, obviously. Like if if there's already instability, if there's already emotional irregulation, then we can and unless there is, like, say, intervention or an epiphany, a real actualization, acknowledgement, not fake apologies, not fake epiphanies. No, this needs to really sink in. This should to a point of devastation. So unless I see people curled up in a fetal position, dribbling and twitching, then I'm not really going to believe any of these epiphanies, because should the understanding really resonate with you, it should trigger the mortification process. You should be on the point of psychosis. And whether or not you go over the edge, hopefully not. But that's the level of extreme I would be expecting to see before anyone really starts making a positive change for the better, and come to Jesus, or totally honest and not deluding themselves further or in denial or trying to lie to themselves by lying to other people. You can't just say, "Oh, I self-reflect. I was self-reflecting yesterday," and be like, "Haha, I've been purified. I'm a virgin again." Nah, it doesn't work like that. No, if you truly did like this is like dark black pill kind of stuff, you know. And I'm trying to make it sound sort of terrifying because it really would be, because you're facing your shadow, the icky stuff that you don't want to acknowledge, and that, you know, you're facing your demons, and that's hard stuff. It's not easy, so that's why you can't flippantly say, "Oh yeah, I did some self-reflection and now I'm so much better and oh my life is whatever." You know, no. I don't buy it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being carried away or whatever. But um, like, not to sound too sadistic or like, we need reconstruction, in my opinion. So this requires the detonation, um, the breakdown, the atomization of your sense of self until it's no longer there, and it needs to be reconstituted. It needs to be put back together in a better way than it was before. Which is why I'm saying it's that's why it's so devastating, because before you can live, before you can truly live, you need to first die. You know, and that's more of a kind of spiritual way of sort of saying it. Um, and so, trying to rewrite an existing programming, like a course correction, isn't really going to be enough, I don't think, for a significant change, because you're still dealing with the corrupted original persona, or the corrupted sense of self. It's just adapted. It's just a chameleon in effect. This uh, this sense of being needs to be much further um, rectified, kind of like a hard reset in a way, or format the hard drive. There's no point trying to run a scan diagnostic tool and quarantine the rogue bugs in the system. No, we need a system refresh. Um, Maybe I'm being a bit extreme. So where does that leave us for the rest of the year? It puts us where, in my looking in my crystal ball, the way I'm seeing things is we're going to see more erratic behavior, more extreme behavior, more emotional behavior, more hysteria, more delusional behavior, and we are going to see pseudo or fake virtue signaling kind of style of like, oh, but I'm not like them. So kind of chameleons trying to adapt and uh, change the narrative, and that's generally what I'm predicting, or what I'm imagining. So that's basically all I got to say, I think. You know, and as doomer gloomer as that might sound, it um, with the lessons of nihilism, you know, this is actually kind of like, it might be a necessity. This might be a good thing. It's like, before you're going to see the sunshine, then we're going to have to get through some of these storms. You know, and or if you want to have a reward, like, what, you know, do you live to work or work to live or whatever? Like, if you want a reward, you're going to have to put some of this effort in, and go through some pain before you come out the other side, assuming you do actually come out the other side. So you could look at, so in a way, what I'm kind of describing also is like the great flood. We're gonna wash will be a time of wow, how do they say it? Oh, is it like put up or shut up? Is that the right way of saying it? Um, or like, those who talk the talk and walk the walk, like it will become evident simply because they're the ones who actually do it right would be the ones who survival of the fittest or the mentally fittest. So it might get a bit hairy, barbaric. Try not to let that disorientate you or take you off your purpose. Remember to center yourself and stay balanced and not be lured into impulsivity, and you'll have a better chance. Ross Shackelford and One Fast Stack and Penguin. Just saying hi because I don't think I said hi earlier to you. I mean, we're pretty much at the end of the stream. I know I'm kind of leaving it at the last minute to say hi. Would anyone want to come up or something, or any questions, or did you have fun tonight? Anyone got a joke or something? I'll give it a couple of minutes, and if not, shall I drop a StreamYard link? Entice you? Right. I hope I haven't been following the chat, but I hope everyone's been behaving themselves. I'm hoping that basically this was just a bit of a chilled stream, really, just a bit of a chin wag and just letting the mind do its exploration, wander around. I don't think we've had any trolls in here, which is nice. I don't particularly see any like arguments being had. Again, also nice that people can be civil and just spending a bit of time together. We don't have to have any issues or whatever. So I'm generally seeing positive stuff in the chat, so I thank you all for that. And I think we'll start to wrap it up then. So yeah, there's take care and all this good stuff. Oh, better late than never. He caught it last second.
Billy, it's good to be with you.
Hey, Truth Anchor. Do you prefer being called like? Can I be short? Do you mind me calling you Anchor or Truth or TA or
I'm not picky. You can call me whatever you want as long as it's not vulgar and disrespectful.
No, of course, no. Totally not. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Thank you for coming on. Yeah.
So you piqued my interest. You were talking about how the school's trying to teach character or values. I guess that's a good thing. But generally, these days seems like they teach the opposite.
Yeah. It horrifies me because ultimately they're making the situation far worse. A lot of it, I mean, you've got elements of like virtue signaling. You've got a lot of blundering around. You've got people who think they know what they're doing, but they don't really. We've got a lot of SJW kind of political motivation because they want to be, but kind of ties into virtue signaling. I see the hypocrisy in a lot of what they're saying as well, and it's just dumbfounding. It's just like, how can you be saying on one hand this when you're propagating something else?
Well, these people play a very different game anytime you build a reality based on logic and rationale. And sometimes it's just a language gap. You just can't converse, or you just can't get over that bridge. So there was one thing I was thinking about today is like college educated people. I saw an interesting study that the let's call it the genocide juice. That's the censored word I got to use for it. But they were saying that the PhDs and the high school educated were the least likely ones to get it. But all the ones with a normal bachelor's or master's, they were or they were more likely to get the genocide juice than the PhDs or the high school people. So the way I perceived that was, for you to go to higher education, you're going to be indoctrinated until you get to that PhD level. And then the majority of those people actually start thinking for themselves. What do you have to say about that?
You were reminding me of a study that was made. It's an American study, or at least the sample was taken from over by the state, and it was looking at the North versus the South. But I can't remember what they were investigating. Like there was some sort of difference between. I think they were trying to say like more affluent areas compared to more less fortunate, say. And I suppose they're trying to suggest that further in the north is more the affluent, and further south is more. I don't mean this in an offensive way or derogatory manner at all, but they were looking at. I don't even really see why they need to make it by region. The point was basically the educated versus lesser educated. I'm not sure whether maybe because it's where your universities are situated. I don't know if there's more universities in the northern half than there are in the south, for example. Like over here in the UK, we've got Oxford and Cambridge, and they're supposed to be like the only two universities that get any recognition, and everywhere else is sort of not as or not as affluent or prestigious. But the question is, how much does someone's education impact their thought processes, their beliefs, their lives, their situations? How vulnerable could they be? And we could throw in here like a little bit of Dunning-Kruger and stupidity, the theory of stupidity, because it becomes an issue of like, well, there's the difference between being smart and smart is not intelligent. They're not the same thing. Intelligence isn't the same as knowledge, or IQ. So the debate about the vaccines and why people see. Are you talking strictly on in terms of how much someone's education will influence their decision? Well, you mentioned indoctrination. So by saying indoctrination, in a way, you're saying like how impressionable or how vulnerable are they to being indoctrinated, to not being in control of their own decision making? How much does all of this play a part in terms of the vaccinations? I think it's a bit of a cop out of an answer for you, I'm afraid. Sorry, but I think it's quite a lot of variables that we need to factor in. I think we can generalize. Some people need vaccination because of their jobs, for example. So they're kind of, not only are they being indoctrinated or brainwashed, but maybe they're being coerced. Maybe they're being, in a sort of way, being blackmailed. Like, you want to keep your job, but you're going to have a vaccination then. Otherwise, we're going to cut your benefits or whatever. You want to travel, then you're going to need a vaccination. So I think we've got elements of essentially it comes underneath the umbrella of control being imposed on people. So how much do people have of their own free will? You know, and some people might be a bit over trusting, they might be naive. Maybe they've got other illnesses, so they have a fear that's often being talked about. This instilling fear into the population, like, you must have this, it'll save your life, and do it now. Don't think, and save, not just save yourself, but you'll be saving those around you as well. So even if you're not doing it for yourself, do it so that you protect your loved ones from you spreading it.
Sorry if you heard me laugh. I was actually laughing at what Ping One said. He said the best thing to come out of turkey is the turkey sandwich. I thought it was funny. But I do see what you're saying. But to me, it was fascinating that the most educated people agreed with the least educated people that, hey, there's some serious logic flaws here. I know what the narrative is. I just, it doesn't make sense. So all that in between, those people with the bachelors and the masters that listened to the TV, that believed, even though there was no long-term studies, that when they said it was safe, that was as good from God Almighty himself. So it kind of makes me think that all those middle people were just being indoctrinated. And then the high level ones were self-thinking, educated people that were reading white papers that knew how the system was supposed to work. And so what's the point of education, because it kind of makes you think, like, all you're going to do is learn what they want you to think, and then 8 years later you'll start thinking for yourself again.
Well, that's one of the. Okay, so in terms of a manipulation point to make, it doesn't really matter what someone's intelligence is. They can be academic, they could be well versed, they could be bookworm or whatever. You can still dupe them. You can still pull some kind of stunt. We all, no one is immune. Not talking about virus. I'm talking about no one's immune from the idea of manipulation. That we all have chinks in our armor. We all have blind spots. Even the most intelligent people, even the smartest. The art of manipulation is to work out what's the angle of attack here. Like, maybe a bit of flattery will do the trick. Maybe some misinformation will do the trick. As a general kind of, I don't want to say rule of thumb, but like a way of caution, is to try not to be swept. Like, love bombing tries to sweep you from your feet so that you don't even have time to think sensibly or reasonably. So if you can slow things down and ponder, consider, reflect upon, then this practice helps you make better decisions. And this ties in with survival, because if the world is constantly changing rapidly, and it is, I mean, even from the 19th century to the 20th century, that was still considered a rapid change, but we are in a hyper changing environment. It'll make anyone's head spin. Even the most bolted on head and shoulders those bolts would be under stress. They'll be spinning. So when you become disorientated, you can't be certain about things. You got loose footing. You don't know what you're being told anymore. Um, this triggers that survival mindset to some degree, and as a result, you become more impulsive. Because you don't have the luxury of time to contemplate on making wise decisions. You got to act now. Like the virus is going to kill everyone. Don't just have the vaccine, and don't even think. This is why you get that buyer's remorse or regret, because once the jab has been done, all said and it's over with. And now the contemplate, it's like you're doing the thinking after the fact that you've had it. It's kind of backwards. It's like, what's the point of thinking about it now? It's too late. You've already had it done. But c'est la vie, you know. It's just unfortunate. It would have been nice if you'd done that thinking beforehand.
Well, I mean,
peer pressure where it's like, no, you have to be quick about it. It's spreading it's out of control.
So me, an absolute knowledge seeker, we try to spend a lot of time letting people know that the powers that be are lying to people, and they don't have your best interest at heart. And if you have to get a adverse reaction or realize that you got something very unhealthy, even though they said it was perfectly safe, then that would be a high price to come to that revelation for that red pill, in my opinion. I think there's a difference between getting it and going into a delusion that you made the right decision versus getting it and realizing you were lied to, and and you're a victim.
I think the idea of like messing with people, like, well, we're going to try to, I don't know, depopulate, or we're going to try and change the genome, or to make these people no longer technically human. I think this is kind of like byproduct sort of stuff that even the powers that be weren't really, because it's a random, like, who knows? It's a little bit like when people talk about chemtrails. It's a little bit kind of like, there are more efficient ways to mess with populations than going about it like this. I think what they had their minds on more predominantly is like, how can we control people and how can we make money?
I do.
And the aftermath is like a byproduct of that.
I do 100% agree on the control people, but the money thing, I'm not so convinced on that, because I mean, particularly in the United States, they create money. I mean, they have infinite sums of money, and that debt bubble's going to die with the petrodollar. But for the time being, I just don't think money is an option with them. Maybe for the lower level ones, yeah, the people that do the dirty work, I do see that.
I just find it hard. Like, an elaborate plan doesn't fall in line very well with a narcissistic. So maybe it might fall in line better with a psychopathic society, because the leaders might be a bit more psychopathic. But we can't. I think we need to acknowledge that narcissism has run rampant and has proliferated into organizations, and is spearheading a lot of these so-called social changes. Either way, either if it's a psychopath or a narcissist, these are disordered minded people, so it's going to be dysfunctional in its constitutional or construct, or how it's been put together. And so what I'm saying is that I don't think it's not a foolproof plan of theirs. Because if they were so powerful as we like to think of them, then we wouldn't stand a hope in hell of mitigating what's coming down the pipeline. We would be done for before we even began. So the mere fact that there is this pushback, or people are having epiphanies or reflecting or having these conversations, is a signal that, as much as we might like to think they've got control over everyone, maybe that's an illusion. Like the shackles that bind you are in your mind and not really physical.
I spent a lot of time wondering about that. I do agree with you that if they had that much power, it's forlorn from the get go. But what I actually think they're doing is they're making it easy on themselves. They're genociding, moving things to where they are. If you think about like every English speaking and predominantly white Western nation, they particularly wanted to change the demographics to dilute the number of white people. They wanted to destroy the family, destroy Christianity. And if you look at every single nation, they have there's a supremacy with their efforts. I mean, they're doing full blown replacement migration. Churches are
Mhm.
falling apart, families are falling apart. And
Yeah.
I don't think like there should be an outlier if there wasn't an all encompassing strategy plan or cabal orchestrating that.
I mean, maybe with those examples you're giving, and those are just a couple of examples, they're each one alone is significant in of itself. Um, but when we realize that this insidious spread, um, by its design, has to, like, if you were going to have absolute control, then your focus of concern wouldn't really be what is already under your control. You'll be more focused on what's not, because it's like that's the rebels. That's the kind of the ones who kind of potentially escape. So it becomes like an incentive, or like, again, sorry for like using like a narcissism uh, way of looking at it, but that which has not been tampered with becomes a focus of concern. And so we see this infectious characteristic start to emerge. And unfortunately, it might not necessarily be something that was consciously thought about, but in terms of a sort of subconscious, natural, sort of like a law of order, that's perhaps is what we're seeing. There's I don't know if this is maybe a bit irrelevant, but I see sometimes people will make a proclamation. They'll say there was a movie that predicted this exact thing. See, it was like a what do you call it? A premonition. Um, However, the thing is, we got movies that cover every worst case scenario. So just mathematically, one or two of these movies is going to be right in a way. It doesn't necessarily mean they had a crystal ball and they made a prediction and they knew it was coming. Like George Orwell's 1984. It's like, oh my God, it's just like that. It's like, well, you can kind of see why. Yeah, it's a bit hard to sort of ignore, but at the same time, it's just like, but this is creative writing or creative film work. It's looking for things that haven't already been created. So mathematically, statistically, we're gonna have something. Well, let's say suddenly, like, the actual devil appeared on Earth, right? And in reality, be like, oh my God, there's a movie about the devil appearing on Earth. It's like, well, yeah, because someone's going to be right at some point. Doesn't mean they actually knew, like, as for like factually, that this was going to happen. It's just kind of like a coincidence at that point. But there's only so much. I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to be like making it. I would encourage people to like that. There are going to be things beyond our reach or beyond our control or beyond our comprehension, or we're just not going to know everything, and as such, we would do better to remind ourselves of what is within our means and what is within our control. So if the world is going to hell, okay, how about less focusing on the annihilation and be more focused on like what are you doing to persevere? Like, are you preparing? Have you got a bunker or something? Because if you're too busy like looking at, I mean, there it's balance, so it don't be one way or the other, and it's hard to have all this like these concepts and ideas in just your one head sort of thing. And so this is why like having conversations, communities, and being able to share and spread the load in a way, delegate tasks and responsibilities to people who are trustworthy, etc., can help us as a collective to navigate better with what's going on. Like there'll be the preppers amongst us who will share useful, like they'll say things like stock up on food, make sure you got water, make sure you got filters and purifiers, and there'll be the financial people would be like make sure you got money in other places. Those aren't my specialities, but mine would be more on this sort of psychological kind of, make sure you got your head on, and you're being present in mind. And obviously you got other kind of niches that are being filled by other people, and together we encapsulate and ensure as a society, as a tribe or a community or a collective, that we're all on the same, well, not on the same page, but like working in harmony with one another. I think that's how we're gonna, regardless of what's taking place. That doesn't mean totally ignore it or dismiss it or don't consider it. Obviously it does. Like you're talking about like indoctrination of universities / like schools. Now my kid's in school, so that's a area of concern for me. Like what the hell's going to happen to her? How much of this is it going to be like a civil war where it's going to be head to head? How much of it can it be coexistence? Like we might not like it, but provided we keep our boundaries and our sense of being, ourself, and independence, etc., like we're not dependent on the state or the elites, we have our liberties and freedoms, then maybe these threats aren't as maybe bad as we might like to catastrophize about.
So I thought that was really good. The thing that piqued my interest, you was talking about a movie that predicted the future. I think you're talking about the Ohio derailment, that movie that was made last year called White Noise.
I don't know that movie.
You might want to look that up because that was one a lot of people have been discussing.
Yeah.
There was an Ohio derailment that so happened to totally predict what happened in Ohio less than a year later. Again, it was called White Noise. But I think if you just study like human history, there's something about humans where we always get globalized, interdependent, sophisticated trade routes.
Yeah.
Then we collapse. Then we go more into a feudal.
That I think is a better predictor than saying, "Oh, there was a movie or there was a book written about this exact event." Like it's it just remind like the Two Towers, right? I can't remember was it a documentary or just it was a video discussing kids. I was watching some documentary thing about kids cartoons, and there was a segment in there where they were just listing out all these cartoons that had references to the Twin Towers, and some of these cartoons had to be re-edited or whatever. Like I think The Simpsons had some references to it, and this is like way before the 9/11 actual event happened. So it's kind of like, and the argument they made was this some kind of elaborate plan to condition the children into accepting that the towers were going to be attacked, so that when the day does happen, they won't be in shock. And it's like, wow, this is a bit of a stretch. This is a bit of a hairbreak, but it's like, how much of this is a coinkydink and how much of this is like preemptive programming? You know what I mean? So, and this is in kids' cartoons.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The thing I studied the Cabal, and they're full blown crazy Satanists. A lot of them are. I know it sounds crazy, but like I can show you videos of some of their rituals that they did and pictures of them actually being there. Bohemian Grove's the big one. That's what Alex Jones got famous for. But one thing they like to do, they think it like protects them from judgment from the spiritual realm, is they'll tell you what they're going to do before they do it. So when Klaus Schwab says you will own nothing, you will be happy, well, you need to know who to blame when the dollar goes worthless.
Yeah, and to some extent, there is some truth in what you're saying there. That lines up with some of the narcissistic literature. They kind of tell you that they're going to abuse you before they actually start the abuse, and the sick and twisted. Well, not. I was going to say like the reason for that, but it's like it's one of many. One is they don't have the self-awareness to realize they're actually doing that. They're actually admitting to what they're planning to do, even if they don't quite know how they're going to abuse you. They just be like, the general principle is that I'm going to abuse you. But there's this interesting one I always that catches stands out amongst all the sort of reasoning, is that so when you do get abused, you can't really turn around and say you're a victim, because it's kind of like, I warned you. It's like, so when they're saying like you're not going to own everything and you're going to be happy, it's like, if you continue in a way this relationship or this fantasy, this shared fantasy, where the socialists are thinking, oh, this will be okay, it'll be all right, we can all share, we can all be egalitarian and equality, and no one needs to be, competition bad, and all this sort of everyone's equal. So they sign up to this sort of like a false promise, thinking, oh yeah, this is a good thing. When they get that sort of realization, like, whoa, this was a Trojan horse and now everything is going to hell, it's like, wow, you were warned, and there you were nodding along in agreement, saying, oh yes, please. There's a little bit also like, people complain about, like in the UK, they complain about the political party that's running the country. And it's like, but didn't you vote them in? And now you're complaining about them. So who's really at fault here? Is it the abuser that's going to abuse? You can't really blame them for doing that. That's kind of like what they're designed to do. Or is it you thinking they weren't going to abuse you? Especially after they told you that they were going to abuse you.
So I'm trying to understand this. Sorry if I'm not paying attention. So when a narcissist brags about what they're going to do before they do it, what exactly is the motive, or what's going through their mind when they're doing that?
Well, one of the reasons is to see whether or not you're dumb enough to fall for their tricks. It's like let's say you and I, like, will you marry me? And then you go, oh, okay, Billy. I'm like, okay, you're an idiot. So yeah, like, will you say I do? And you go, oh yeah, I do. I'm thinking, well, as long as you say, if that's what you want to believe, then fine. Yeah, those words mean nothing to me. So I'll say I do as well, if it means you're gonna hang around for the abuse. But I ain't gonna So you'll be like, because you believe in this word of and marriage, you believe this is sacred and it has value and it's important. You'd be a man of honor and you're gonna keep your word and your vows. And like the abuser is like, yeah, that makes you weak. This is the problem with boundaries. The abuser sees boundaries as a weakness, but for people like you and I, we understand that these boundaries is actually a form of strength.
Mutual respect, yes.
Yeah, and I mean it has boundaries is a whole topic of it in of itself, but so but for people who are exploitative, who are they want it all, they're grandiose, they're entitled, and then you want to say to them, oh, have some boundaries, they'll be like, why the hell would I want boundaries? That's like strangling me. The funny thing is that they do have boundaries. It's a one-way street. So from their point of view, it's like, I will take everything of yours, but you're not allowed to take anything of mine. If you try and take anything of mine, I'm gonna assert my boundary. And that's what earlier in the conversation, the wall is the boundary. So that's a misconception. When it comes to narcissism, they say like they've got no boundaries. That's a misconception. They do have they have very strong boundaries. It's just a one-way transaction.
Well, talking about women narcissists, do you think that narcissism is just a childlike mindset, and that the women narcissists, that instead of wanting to get into a committed relationship and be loyal to a man, they just can't think beyond the wall, so they do these stupid things that end up being sad and lonely post wall?
Okay, here's another misconception. Shinobi One, if you're listening, you asked this question that was like, how did you ask it? It's like, how does someone become a narcissist, or when does someone become a narcissist? Right, misconception. We are all born narcissists. The question is, when do you stop being a narcissist? And this is as you're progressing through your childhood and you're beginning to learn that life isn't given to you on a silver platter, that there are rules and obligations, that there is responsibility, that you need to be accountable. This is you moving away from your narcissism, because now you're keeping it in check, you're regulating it, and you're reflecting on your behavior, and you're maturizing. And this is why when the child doesn't have that growing process, they become stunted, they become stuck, and as a result, it's not like they've turned into a narcissist, they remained a narcissist.
Yeah, I could see that. A lot of narcissists I dealt with, I said it's like dealing with a 3-year-old in an adult body.
And this is why, in part, when we have these conversations about art, we can kind of understand, we can, as distorted and mind-boggling as it is, we can kind of wrap our heads around it, because all we need to do really is think back in time when we were kids and be like, oh yeah, I remember how that could work, So it's not as as crazy as these deep dives and rabbit holes can be. It's not exactly alien to us. We can like with a bit of patience, we can see how from their point of view they might think it makes sense.
But do you agree though that narcissists have an incredible short-term vision in when they do their motives and their actions?
It depends on the kind of caliber of the lower grade narcissist, and most of the middle grade narcissists. They don't have to be able to foresee, to contemplate, to predict, requires some self-awareness. It requires some mature thinking to be able to see where you are now. And well, they do have their eye on the prize, so they see far off into the horizon, but they totally miss the how to get there, and this is where they make mistakes and blunder, and they go off their trajectory. So usually it becomes like a scramble mess trying to attain this goal they set out with. But also typically this goal that they wanted, this prize, isn't really a reasonable. It was made on a whim. It was like, it's like saying like, I want a gold-plated Lamborghini. Sounds flashy, sounds cool. It's just I want it. It's like, hang on, whoa, be careful what you ask for. Okay, fine. Maybe you might succeed and get this gold-plated Lamborghini, but you got a problem now. Now you're being like now everyone knows you've got it. They're going to try and steal it, or it's got high expenses, and you're gonna, as soon as you get it, you can't afford the bills and you lose it or whatever. You know, the whatever goal it is that they're after comes with consequences. It comes with responsibility, and this is one of their problems because they want to be evasive of that. They kind of want it both. They want the goodies, but they don't want the. It's like they want the power or the control, but they don't want what it entails.
Well, one thing I've seen with narcissists is like they'll be incredibly mean and cruel to people, and then those people quit talking to them, and then they get sad that they're lonely and nobody wants to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems like it's a really stupid thing, kind of like licking a light socket and getting surprised and sad that you know your tongue burns.
Well, yeah, and quite often they'll be angry. It's like, how dare you leave me? You're supposed to be here for my benefit because I need to abuse you. You're my punching bag, and then you're walking off. How can I abuse you? So the cheeky remark they might make, if we had a translation, would be with their victimhood, would be like, you're abusing me because you're not allowing me to abuse you.
Yeah, I think actually one thing I said one time was, I do not exist as a object for your torment.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, it's like they don't even look at you as a person. So when you utter those sort of words, it would be as if your toaster has a voice and has said, like, "F you, Truth Angler, I ain't gonna make you toast," you know. So so you would look at that toaster and be like, "You're a malfunctioning toaster. You're being defiant." And so the narcissist, when you say this to the narcissist is like, "Hang on, whoa, there's something." So you might be pointing out to the narcissist, "Hey, there's something wrong with you. You're crazy in the head or whatever. You got magical thinking," and this is defiance. This is, hang on, you're not. I'm supposed to be puppeting you. You're supposed to be saying things that I want you to say, and you're going against the script. So either you're defiant, a rebel, or there's something wrong with you. And whatever the case may be, usually that will kind of start to trigger a devaluation and a discard, because we can't have someone in this narcissistic paradise world which is a rebel or whatever. This is why they don't look at people as people. They are extensions of the narcissist. It's all a stage show, and the people they have interactions with are the supporting cast. They are the star. They are also the director, but they are the star, and the show is for their own benefit, not for you and I, as much as it may seem. We don't exist. We are figments of their imagination.
I guess I have one last interesting question. So when you stand up to a narcissist, obviously the narcissist will attack you, but all the little weak people that let the narcissist walk all over them, a lot of times they will attack the person defying the narcissist. So I guess my question to you would be, why is it the people, the little beta males or whatever that get walked all over? Why is it they can stand up to the defiant one, but not the narcissist?
Because I've actually got a stream covering this topic. I think it's called like your participation in the narcissistic fantasy, something about participation in the fantasy. So if you want a thorough explanation, go check out that stream. But to answer your question here right now, because these white knights or the betas or the simps or codependents are basically what they are, the flying monkeys to some extent. They are in a shared fantasy with the narcissist. So if you attack the narcissist, you are threatening this shared utopia. And so the white knight is going to go to the rescue. Even if the white knight realizes that the narcissist is abusive, they need to live in this fantasy. And they can't be disrupted. So the narcissist, usually in a kind of like life support sort of breadcrumbing sort of way, gives the codependent some degree of validation. It gives them some self-esteem so they can feel better. Like the white knight. The white knight, the armor comes from the narcissist. The knight wears the emblem of the narcissist. And so when he goes to his queen's defense, he's not just trying to protect the queen. It's part of his self-preservation because he's dependent on that queen for subsistence. Without that queen, he also dies. They're joined. They're in a union. So it doesn't matter if she's a horrible witch. He needs to protect her. He needs her. He believes he needs her anyway. Without her, if she is overthrown, then it puts his situation in jeopardy as well. So this is why he will come to her aid and fight you off.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. Like, I see Will Smith smack Chris Tucker. I'm sitting there thinking, well, why are you putting up with your wife cheating on you, making a fool of you and everything you built with your family? But yeah, thanks for giving me that, Billy. That gives me a lot of peace. But I better take off. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pleasure, and you're welcome anytime coming on. I always love the narcissistic questions and explanations, and always covering it again. It's always good to have like little refreshers. So thank you, and I'll be shutting down anyways in a few little minutes. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Peace.
Peace. So my Firefox window has gone gray on me. Is the stream still running, or have I been like terminated? That'll be a first. Be like, oh, Susan got me. I got get by Susan. It says I'm still live. Hopefully I'm still live. It says I've got 14 people watching. But anyway, we're going to be closing up pretty much. Oh, still going. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, that was a fun little chat. Anyway, it's time to go. Go live your lives. I've kept you captive long enough. I'm sorry. You're all you must enjoy the punishment. You're all masochists or something. So yeah, be good, be excellent to each other, take care of yourselves, enjoy yourselves, try not to catastrophize, don't be living in la la land like sunshine and rainbows and positivity, like, oh, everything is wonderful, I don't see any problems. No, you got to have a bit of a balance. You need to have that kind of discernment and executive mind. No when there's a time, there are times when stress and attention is action is required, but you don't want to be like pedal to the metal and exhaust yourself as well. So don't forget to fundamentally have some self-care and look after yourselves and all that sort of stuff. So good night and see you next time. Thank you for coming.